Hi, good evening, and welcome to my weekly 10 show. And I'm doing a new sort of thing here. I'm going to start doing a little how-to series. Each week, for the next month or so, I'm going to go through different things that we all struggle with, we're human beings, and work out solutions for them. So tonight, I'm going to talk about how to stop overthinking. And this is something that we all do. You know, it's a normal thing for any of us. We're human beings after all. So, but before I do, I want to just say that I'm available for one-to-one coaching still and speaking arrangements. My book is coming out this year, To Hell and Back and Then Some, which documents my journey. And my keynote talks all about how we can all create what we want despite the circumstances surrounding us. And I think it's fair to say that pretty much everyone's faced with difficult circumstances right now worldwide, and it's important to be able to create a mindset which helps us create what we want despite difficult times. So if you're interested in finding out more about how I can work with you one-to-one or my speaking events, please get in touch and I'll talk to you more about that. Okay, so tonight I'm talking about overthinking, procrastination, things like that. So it's fair to say that overthinking, procrastinating, things like that are related to the levels of stress that we're experiencing. Now, the more stress we've got in our lives, the more we're going to overthink, the more we're going to worry, the more we're going to fear, and things like that going on. So it's a normal thing for us all. We tend to only ever experience procrastination and worry and things like that when we're stressed. So the more stress we have in our lives at any given time, the more we find ourselves excessively thinking about things and going over it in our minds to the point where we create things like anxiety, stress, worry, all of those sort of things, which hold us back and stop us doing the things that we truly want to be. And before you know it, we lose sight of the direction we want to be going in life. We're not focusing on the things that we truly want to be focusing on, and we're only focusing on problems, restrictions, and reasons why we can't do things. And that keeps us stood still, and we don't move forward. Procrastination is the key to that for most people. We overthink things to death to the point where we literally talk ourselves out of moving forward, and we stay in our comfort zones and don't do anything about our situations, even if we know we should. So think of a time when you've been completely stress-free, and it might not have been recently because we've had a lot of stress on our plate recently, but think of a time when you've been completely stress-free in your life and try to recall whether you were overthinking at the time and whether you were worrying about things at the time and whether you had things like anxiety at the time. And I think most people will say that they didn't. And that's because you're probably more in the moment. You're more focused on that time, because when we're enjoying life, when we're free of stress, we're focused on what's going on. If you're at a football match, if you're at a concert, if you're with a loved one having a meal or whatever it may be, there'll be a time in our lives when we've been completely stress-free and everything just seems good. And that's the times when we don't have any stress, we don't have any overthinking, we don't have that excessive thought process going on. So the fact is, most of us will have some kind of stress in our lives, though. You know, you can't avoid stress. It's going to be present at some point or some way in our lives. You know, especially what we've just said there a minute ago, in the current circumstances, stress comes in many, many different ways and forms. So you can't avoid difficult circumstances as much as we'd love to. And, you know, also, you know, difficult circumstances teach us a lot. So again, it's a good thing that we don't avoid difficult circumstances, because although they're hard to go through at times, we grow, we learn, we move forward in ways we wouldn't do if we didn't go through those circumstances. So that's one thing worth remembering. But it could be a mental thing, it could be an emotional thing, it could be even a physical thing that's draining your energy in some way so that you're not feeling the way you truly want to be. And that will create some kind of stress in your life. It might be a social thing. Your social life might not be where you want it to be. It could be an environmental thing. You might be living in a place which you don't like, or you might be working in a place which you don't like. All of these things affect how we feel. And if you're thinking you're not happy about something in any aspect of your life, or something's triggering you in some way in your life, it will lead to what's called a stress reaction. And if you're experiencing a stress reaction, you're going to start feeling things like fear, worry, frustration, anger, all of these draining sort of emotions. And the more we feel those sort of things, the more we feel, victimized about something, maybe, the more likely we are to start overthinking stuff. And we start running through our mind all the different possibilities and things like that. And that's when we start getting lost. We lose track of where we want to be going in our life because we're too busy overthinking every little element of it, to the point where we just lose track of everything. And we don't know what way to turn, when we lose all sort of awareness of our thinking. And before you know it, we're just feeling anxious and stressed and worried. And that doesn't help us, does it? So how do you stop overthinking? How do you create a mind free of all the stress and worry and anxiety that holds us back in life, and stop procrastinating about every decision in life, and being able to see ways forward which we probably wouldn't be able to do otherwise? Because if you're focusing only on a problem or a reason why you can't do something, the likelihood is you're not going to be seeing the reasons why you can, and the opportunities and the possibilities within any given situation. If you're looking to create a business, or you move forward in business, and you're only looking at the reasons why something won't work, the likelihood is you won't see the reasons why it will. And that's all down to overthinking. We overanalyze things to the point where we stand still. So it's normal for any of us to experience what's called a stress reaction. Our values, our morals might be affected in some way, or compromised, and we might see something on the news or something like that. Whatever it may be, things trigger us in life. You cannot avoid that, and that's called a stress reaction. We will go through a day and we could be triggered dozens of times by many different things. If we're not consciously aware of how that affects us, it will lead to us overthinking, becoming much more detached mentally, and not being able to see the wood for the trees. We're too busy thinking about all the possibilities that go on in our heads. And what tends to happen when we get triggered is we see everything through the lens of our fears, our judgments, our assumptions, our interpretations, our limiting beliefs. And they're the things that create all our fears and worries and stuff like that, because we're not seeing things with any real clarity or objectivity when we're feeling that way. We're only seeing what we don't want to see, and that's problems. So it's very important to be able to switch your subconscious mind off and be much more aware and be much more in the moment when you're going through anything in life, and especially difficult circumstances like we're experiencing now, because the more difficulty in life that you experience, the more stress you're going to feel, the more you're going to overthink, and the more it will just drive you crazy in the end. So it's very important to be able to focus your mind on being more aware of what you're thinking and how that's affecting you in terms of your emotions and, of course, your actions. Because the more you focus on what you're thinking in a conscious way, the less those thoughts will affect you in a negative way. So when we start seeing anything in life from a low level of energy, focusing solely on our fears, worries, problems, it becomes impossible to see any sort of positivity, any sort of clarity, any way forward. We can't see a solution to our problems because all we're looking at is the problem. So everything we think, it will be influenced by our judgments or interpretations in some way. And it's important to be able to switch those off. So the key to not overthinking is to be able to recognize when we're doing it, for a start. Because if you don't know you're doing it and it's just taking you over and you're doing it anyway, how the heck are you going to stop it? So you've got to be able to recognize that you're doing it in the first place. And that takes self-awareness. So you can only really stop overthinking by increasing or improving on your self-awareness, firstly. You need to be able to say, I'm overthinking and I don't want to be overthinking. So what do I need to do to stop that? So the more you're aware of that, the more able you are to stop that. And that is not an easy thing. It takes time to develop self-awareness. It's a process, but you can do it. And we are all in control of our own minds, and we're able to switch our thoughts off when we need to. If we need to focus on something that's really pressing, we can switch our unconscious mind off and focus on what we need to focus on. But most of the time we choose not to, because we're not aware that we're allowing our subconscious mind to drive us, you see. So by focusing only on the now, the current moment, and stopping all thoughts about the past or the future, then only then can you guarantee any true clarity of mind. And that's when you're able to start making decisions and choices which work for you, instead of the confusing picture that your subconscious mind is throwing at you, which is completely disorientating and gives you a completely biased picture, which is not necessarily the case. Because when I say biased, I mean by it's influenced by your judgments, by your interpretations, assumptions, and all the things that are not necessarily accurate. So you're not going to see anything with any clarity. So bringing yourself into the moment takes practice, but it's essential to your overall performance and general well-being, because the more in the moment you are, the more likely you are to create thoughts, feelings, and emotions and actions that work for you. And the more you do that, the more successful you'll be generally in your life over a long period of time. So it's very important to be more self-aware of what's going on in your mind and be more in the now. After all, when you think about how often, and this is a good way to look at it, I mean, if you think about how often in your life you've spent actually in the moment, as opposed to actually thinking about the past or thinking about the future in some way, how often have you actually spent in the moment? And I think you'll find very few of us do, because we're always thinking about something that's happened in the past, or we're thinking about something that's going on in the future. Very rarely are we thinking or focusing on what's going on right now. And that's quite shocking, really, because we're not really truly living life when we're doing that. So it's important to be able to do that, to switch that unconscious mind off and focus on the moment as much as you possibly can, so that you can create as much as you possibly can. So we learn to turn off the analytical, critical mind and bring intuition back into life, because again, we don't really tune into our intuition when we're in our subconscious, because we're unaware of it. We're not tuned into it. But when you switch off the analytical and critical mind, we can tune into our intuition. And again, that helps us make conscious choices which work for us and actually much more productive for us. So if you're living in your mind, if you're not living in the moment, you're never truly playing full out in life. You're always playing half the potential that you could possibly be playing at. And that's tragic. So I'm going to give you a few little ideas here, exactly what we need to do in order to develop our presence in the moment. And it is important that we do practice this, because the more we do, and it does take time to develop self-awareness, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And it's easier to switch off that subconscious mind when it gets out of control. So we're all going to have stress reactions in life. You cannot avoid them. But what you can do is control them. So every time something triggers you, we're going to have that initial like feeling. But then as soon as you become aware of that, you can do something about that. Stop the overthinking, bring yourself back to the moment, and think about things, see things in a much more clearer, objective way, free from the judgment and all that sort of stuff. So the things I would say are the main things to do here are to focus literally on one thing at a time. If we're focusing on dozens of different things, we're never in the moment. So focusing on one thing at a time is very important. Turning off the analytical and critical mind, and freeing yourself from any sort of distractions, because this is one of the main things that switches us off from the moment and into the unconscious, looking at your phone, going on TikTok, or watching the telly, watching the news, talking to your friends, or it might be a mental distraction of some sort. So freeing yourself from all distractions, taking nothing personally. If someone says something on Facebook or wherever and it triggers you, remember, it's not personal. It's more about that person than it is you. If someone gets angry, it's not about you. It's about them. Something within them is being triggered that they're taking out on you. So make no assumptions and make as few judgments as possible. That's very key, because we're all judgmental beings. And the more we judge, the more we create these beliefs, which are not necessarily true. And they fuel our overthinking. Detach ourselves from all future potential results, because if we're focusing on a result in the distance and we don't achieve that result, or some reason it doesn't come to fruition, we're just going to get disappointed. So being in the moment means you're not focusing on results. You're only in the moment and you're creating life as you live it. So let go of any need to control any situations or be right in any situations as well. Because so many of the times ego takes over. I need to be right. I need to be heard, and whatever it is. And before you know it, we trigger ourselves, and then we lose control, and then we're back into that unconscious mind again, which is the overthinking. So, and finally, be as passionate as you possibly can about all experiences in life, especially the hardest ones, because they're the ones that teach us the most. So I hope that's been of some help to people tonight, because a lot of people do struggle with overthinking. And, I'm here to help people like that. One of the main things I do is help people develop their self-awareness. And if you're interested in finding out more about how I do that and how I can help you specifically to increase your self-awareness, get rid of any overthinking, get rid of any anxiety, fears, worries, so that you can start enjoying your life a bit better, then get in touch with me and I will have a chat with you. Okay, have a wonderful evening. I hope that's benefited some people, and I will be back next time with another how-to. I'll see you soon. Bye.